Hello, my name is Haley Estes. I have been sharing content here on YouTube and across the web since about 2017, and it's been a while since I have shared a full-length video here on YouTube. So this is me stepping back into YouTube. I really wanted to step back in YouTube for a couple of years now, and it just hasn't been the season for my family. We have moved 3 different times. We built a home that I am now sitting in, and we started fostering and adopted a baby through foster care last fall in 2022. So now here it is, April of 2023, and I just want to come back on YouTube. Those are just kind of like the really quick rundown of where I've been, what I've been doing. But we also started homeschooling. There was also a pandemic that happened in the time from my last full video to now. And a lot of things changed for our family because of the pandemic, but the biggest thing has been homeschooling. So today I want to get on here and just share my heart with you about homeschooling, because I share a lot of reels on Instagram and I've shared little snippets of homeschooling, but I get lots of questions asking for deeper, full explanations about what we're doing, how we're doing it. And that is where YouTube comes in. I want to share more of the details of homeschooling and why it works for our family, why it could potentially work for your family here on YouTube. So today I just want to share with you why we started homeschooling. Also, preface, all my kids are home. We homeschool. So I have 6 kids here and a baby who is not quiet. He is outspoken, and we love that about him. So you're going to hear him. But he is well cared for in the background of this video, and everything is good. So if you hear him, everything's fine, I promise. But he's just going to make noises, and that's the way kids are, and that's okay. So I hope you can excuse my kids in the background and not be too bothered by the sounds. But part of the reason I haven't gotten back on YouTube is because I want everything to be perfect, and I want all my videos to be perfectly edited and perfectly well spoken, and there not to be sounds in the background, but there's no time in my life to make that happen. So I'm just jumping in and doing this. So let's talk about why I love homeschooling. Homeschooling has changed my entire family's lives, and for so many different reasons. First, let me start by saying I never saw myself homeschooling. I didn't have any desire to homeschool. And I know I was one of many families who decided to homeschool because of the pandemic. And for us, it was kind of a multitude of reasons, but I had 4 kids going into the 2020 fall school year that were all expected to do virtual school, one being a kindergartner who was just starting to read. And I had 2 students with special needs in school who have learning disabilities, and then also a 2nd grader. And I just didn't feel comfortable with them receiving their education through virtual schooling. And it led me to research different options, and I ultimately decided that maybe we would just try this homeschooling thing and see how it went for the first semester. And if it didn't go good, we would re-enroll them. And perhaps when school just went back to normal, they could go back to school. And that was kind of my mindset going into homeschooling. But I feel like I got really lucky with some of the resources my friends who were already homeschooling shared with me, such as books and podcasts that kind of helped me catch the homeschooling bug. And if you've already caught it, you know what I'm talking about. But if you're like, homeschooling is not for me, I have no desire to homeschool, it could just be because you don't have all the information and you just haven't really looked at it from the perspective of understanding what homeschooling can be. I think I had a very poor misconception of homeschooling because some of the examples of homeschooling families that I grew up with were not like what I thought my ideal family would be like. And now I'm realizing I harshly judged families, and I didn't realize they were experiencing something totally different through their education. And I'm so excited I now get to see it from a different lens and give that kind of an education to my kids. So let's jump into why I love homeschooling. The first reason I love homeschooling is time. you only get a finite amount of time with your kids before they're adults and they start making different choices and doing their own thing in life. And um, also, I feel like we live in a very rushed world. And one of the beauties for my family of the pandemic was we really had to slow down and life became much, much slower. And several members, of myself included in my family, really struggle with anxiety. And I didn't realize that by simply just slowing down and not having to have these fast paced mornings where we were getting ready for school and trying to get out the door on time and make it to school drop off on time and get home from school and rush to get homework done and then not have time for like quality time as a family, except for sometimes on the weekend when there wasn't a million events, all of that, I started to realize like, wow, when we have more time and we can kind of ease into our day and have a slow evening and spend quality time together, like things really changed in my home and the anxiety level of those of us who struggle with anxiety like went way down. And like it gives me goosebumps because it really was affecting one of my kids very poorly. He was getting physically sick a lot and it was anxiety. And it just kind of like went away overnight once my kids came home for the spring break that never ended. And so yeah, time is a huge reason. The other reason is I now get to pick and choose how we spend our time together. And that is like absolutely priceless. I didn't realize how much time was being wasted by coming and going to so many activities and running to and from school and just my kids being away from me at school. But the time that I was losing out on. And it wasn't until I was faced with the reality that like, oh, okay, like our forever spring break is now ending and they're going to go back to virtual school and then eventually in-person school, that I started to like kind of have almost like these jealous feelings of like, oh, someone else is going to get to spend this time with my kid and I'm not going to. And I'm sad I'm going to lose this time with my kids. And that was really what made me come face to face with deciding to homeschool, was that I wanted more time with my kids. I wasn't ready to send them back. And that's kind of where it all started. And so time is like one of the biggest factors. Also, these are not ranked like biggest to low, like my reasons are not ranked. These are just reasons that we have decided to homeschool, and everyone's going to have different reasons, but these are our reasons, but they're not like order of like the number one reason to the lowest or anything like that. But time really is one of the biggest ones. The next thing was education. I think I'm not the only parent who is struggling with the education that our children are getting in public schools. Fortunately, I live in an area where we have a really great public school, and we actually had a really positive experience in the public school system where we live, but it's not for every student. And that is where my kids struggled. I mentioned that I have two kids who have IEPs and have learning disabilities. And so even with those safeguards in place to kind of help give them more time and more resources and stuff, things were still moving at a much faster pace than what they were capable of. And they needed more time to be able to do things and learn things at their own pace. One of the reasons I love homeschooling so much is because each of my kids has an individualized education through homeschooling. They're not lost in a crowd of 30 students. It's just me and my 6 kiddos. At this time when we started, there were 5. And that's much smaller than most classrooms, especially in a public school setting. And I love that we can kind of cater each of my kids' education plan to meet their needs. And that has been so amazing. And that has changed and blossomed. It's now 2023, so we are ending our 3rd year homeschooling and jumping into our 4th year homeschooling. And so we've kind of worked out the kinks and figured out what's working, what's not working. And some things worked from the very beginning and some things didn't. And I just love that I can individualize my kids' education plans. The next thing is also education related, and that is the education I get to receive along with my kids. I didn't realize I've always been a lifelong learner, and I've taught myself different things as an adult. graphic design, digital illustration, things like that. But I didn't realize how much I would love going back through and learning things with my kids. I struggled as a student in school until about high school, and then everything kind of clicked for me. But it took a long time for me to grasp all the concepts. And I, too, like some of my children, needed more time before everything just kind of like made sense. And I didn't understand all the rules of grammar. They just kind of were like, these are the rules. And now that I get to teach my kids the rules of grammar and spelling and history and science, all of these things make sense to me as an adult in a way they didn't before. It's like taking a refresher course with my kids as we do school, and then learning even deeper the subjects that we're learning. And that's another reason I love homeschooling, is I feel like my kids are able to get a richer education because of the standards that each state has for what kids need to learn throughout a school year. It's like a mile wide and an inch deep. They learn a vast amount of things in one subject, particularly history and science, but they don't really deep dive into one subject enough to really understand it and really know what they're learning. They're learning to take tests. And that is the total difference with homeschooling, is that you don't learn to take a test. You learn to learn for the sake of learning, and it's true learning. So we get to really dive into different topics. For science, we have done marine animals and birds, and we've really dove into those topics. And my kids still, it's been a year or 2 years since we've done some of those subjects, and they still know things that we learned, and we never tested on it. They know it because we studied it so deeply. And same with history. We get to use living books instead of textbooks that are just rote facts that are spewed at them and then they have to regurgitate them on a test. We get to learn true stories of people who lived in the past through their written words or through words of others that have written about their stories. And they get to really understand what happened in history because they get a richer view of it. And it's not just like a quick week where we go over the Constitution and they know we have a Constitution, but they don't understand the history behind it and the story of why it came to be and all the players involved. And so it's been so awesome to learn with my kids and then also get to really learn with them and understand things in ways I didn't as a child. And I'm so grateful that my kids are getting this experience of really getting to learn and not having the stress of tests and exams and quizzes, and it's more about true education. So true education would be another reason why we love homeschooling. Another really big reason that we love homeschooling is relationship. I have a completely different relationship with my kids than I did 4 years ago when they were in public school. I used to feel the dread when it was like time for them to come home from school, and like it's sad for me to admit that because it's like, oh, life's going to go back to crazy. I had 3 kids in public school when they were still in public school at the time. And it was like, oh, now chaos is going to start. And I hate that I felt that way, but I know so many mothers do. And I hope that none of you feel like I'm judging you or that you should feel bad about feeling that way. I felt that way too. It wasn't until we were home and established this routine at home and spent all this time together at home that I started to realize, like, I really love these people. I really enjoy their company. I really think they are amazing individuals, and I've really gotten to like bond with my kids in different ways through learning, through reading books, and spending time with them one-on-one. So yeah, I feel like my relationships with my kids have completely changed. One of my kids in particular, he and I really butted heads a lot, and we really struggled. I think part of it is because he was really struggling with school, and then he would come home and we would do homework together, and he was still struggling, but it was just like he needed a break. He needed to go at a slower pace. He needed less shoved on his plate, and he needed more time and freedom. And homeschooling gives you that time and freedom. And my relationship with him is completely different than it was 4 years ago. And he and I are totally, like, our relationship is totally different, and we joke around and we're playful and we're fun, and it's not all business. Another thing about my kids' education that I really love is I get to choose what we learn. not only do we get to learn in a different way, but I get to choose what we learn, and that's been so awesome. We do scripture study together when we start school. We have prayers during school. We sing hymns during school. Public school has really pushed God out of the picture, and for us, it's a big part of our life, and for us, it's a big part of our family culture, and I love that we get to develop our own family culture. And that's one of the things that I've learned through homeschooling, is that you can have a family culture, which is the things that are valuable to you and your family, the type of education that you agree is good for your family. I love that we get to choose the education, and I can handpick things that I want my kids to learn, and we can do it seasonally, which we've done. We can do it with holidays and things that are just happening in the world. We can dive deeper into certain things that make sense for what's happening in the world. And that's been really cool to help my kids understand what is happening and how it connects to us, even when it's happening in different parts of the world. And I love that we get to just handpick and choose, and we can take things at our own pace, and we can drop everything and say, okay, we need a free day and we can go play outside. It's really cool to be in charge of my kids' education and to know where they're at and understand their strengths and weaknesses and be able to help them with those things. And that's been really cool. Those are kind of the main things that I really love about homeschooling. I could go on for hours about all the things I love about homeschooling, but those are just some of the main things. I hope you guys will stick around. I'm going to be sharing our curriculum picks for the 2023-2024 school year. I will be sharing both grade level and then subjects, as well as kind of like the broad spectrum of things that we're using, as well as products and things that we're using to help supplement school with art and books and things like that. So I hope you will stay tuned, and I will be sharing a lot more homeschool content here on my YouTube channel. If you've been around since I've been sharing DIY and decor, those things aren't going anywhere. I will be sharing more of that stuff too. I'm just going to kind of start by getting into homeschooling and sharing homeschool stuff, because it's just been on my heart to share, because it's really impacted my family in such a positive way, and I want to share it with more people. I have really loved watching other YouTubers who share their homeschooling journey. It's really helped my family, and I know that there's not enough people sharing about homeschooling, and so I want to just be another voice in this crowd of people who are sharing things, so that maybe if I'm the person who speaks to you and helps you homeschool in a better way, or gives you ideas or insight, that's what I want to do. So thanks for being here and watching this video today. Make sure you like and subscribe my channel. If you want to know more about what's happening in my life and details behind our foster care journey and adoption, I've shared all of that in highlights on my Instagram, which is the Mountain View Cottage on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, all of it. So thanks for being here, and I will see you guys soon.